Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fiume, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. On today's show, I have the president of Bio1, Danessa Itaya. Danessa, how are you today?
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. I want to hear all about Bio1. So why don't you tell us what in the world is this company? What do you guys do?
We are probably the most interesting company. Anytime you join a party and people ask what you do, you are immediately the center of attention. But Bio1, we are a crime and trauma scene cleaning company. And so we work with law enforcement, we work with property managers, we work with restoration companies. We come in after the police have cleared the scene, and we come in and take care of it so that the families can get back into their home. We also do hoarding cleanings. So as we know that a lot of times in a hoarding clean, there's an element of bio involved as well. And so with that, our teams are trained and have the expertise to help people who find themselves in that situation as well.
Well, there's unfortunately a need for your business that forever will be. It is what it is, but somebody has to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why they call us.
That's why they call you. So Danessa, you've been with the company for about 2.5 years now as the president, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And so would you share with our audience a little bit about who founded it and how it got started?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think like most companies, most home services, it's built based on a need. You know, our founder, he was at church and the pastor kind of mentioned that there was a family who was in need. There had been a death, and he asked if there was anybody in the congregation who knew of someone who could do it or could help out. And he saw the need for it and said, hey, this is something that, you know, he saw that the ability to be tied to community and be able to help people on the worst day of their life, but then also to be the expert in it and to understand how to do it correctly. It's more than a mop and a bucket and some gloves. And so, you know, you partner really good expertise on that, and then you partner that with empathy and compassion, and you've got a pretty nice business model. So he started the business, owned it. He started in 2010. And then in about 2021, he sold the business to 5-Star Franchising. And so 5-Star Franchising is our platform company. We're one of 6 companies, 6 brands, all focused in the home service industry there. And so it's neat to be able to continue to build on what Nick built and being able to continue to scale that and be able to bring in systems and processes.
Wow, fascinating, Danessa. What about your story? So you've been with the company 2.5 years. What were you doing before this?
Yeah, so it's interesting. My background is predominantly franchising. Kind of stumbled into it as an accounting assistant at Molly Maid. And, you know, it's one of those things that you do and you say, hey, I think there's a pretty neat opportunity here for me to learn all about franchising. I don't think you realize you're doing that until you say, hey, listen, I love accounting. It's great. But tell me more about this training opportunity. Tell me more about this operation support. And so I was afforded the opportunity to wear a number of different hats as I essentially grew my career at Molly Maid, which is residential cleaning. And so when I joined Bio1, they said, hey, you know residential cleaning, you're going to be a great fit for Bio1. And I said, where residential cleaning stops, that's where Bio1 picks up. But amazingly, there are some similarities there more than anything. I mean, it's really that help first, business second concept, and And, I've just throughout my career have been afforded the opportunity to learn an industry,
Hmm.
everything from starting from the ground up to working with some pretty mature brands. And so it's fun to be able to kind of take all of that knowledge, bring it to BioOne as we continue to grow the brand and help. For BioOne, our goal is never to be a household name, but to be known that if you ever find yourself in this situation, this is who you call.
That's fascinating. What about for you to come into a brand where it was founder led, gets sold, and you come in as a president of a company? What are some of the challenges associated with kind of taking over the reins
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
situation like this where, it's part of a platform?
Right, right. So a lot of change for a brand, right? Going from founder
Yeah.
led, they were on a first name basis, they knew him and that's what they bought into. And then you bring in, a company like Five Star Franchising and they say, wow, now we're one of many. And so it was an adjustment for them. I came in about a year after that transaction. And with that, it was really neat to be able to come into a brand, one, where the franchisees absolutely love what they do. A lot of times people say, "Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't know if I can do that." And that's true. This model is not for everyone. But as you talk to our franchisees, they absolutely love what they do. So one, you get the passion of the franchisees, and then two, you bring them a model. You show them how you're going to be able to scale this model for them. When we joined, there was very little data available. So imagine being the president of a company and not knowing what your average ticket was or what your average, and so what does your revenue by cleaning type look like? All of
Right.
these things that I'm like, well, where are my KPIs? And they say, well, we think it's about this or it's about that. And so one of the things we immediately recognized is there was a need for some data. And so with that,
Hmm.
things like CRMs, things like consistent marketing, things like websites and national branding came into play. And so it was really neat to be able to take BioOne from being founder led and really more relationship built versus
Hmm.
being able to really come in and now being able to share KPIs. And so now what we're able to do is provide benchmarks and say, hey, as you look at the reason why we look at your P&L is because we want to show you this is for a business your size in this market. This is what it should look like. So let's take a look. Let's dig into it deeper. Let's figure out where you're off. Where are you just doing an amazing job? And how do we share that best practice with the network? So being able to really develop things like that, it's been fun.
Wow. And it sounds like the back office is really what was needed more than
Yeah.
anything else.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
How does one even price a client?
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Yeah. Yeah. So there are a couple things. Obviously, it's going to there are so many different factors, right, that
Hmm.
go into this. How big, how long? Is this going to be covered by insurance or is this
Hmm.
something that the homeowner is having to pay for out of pocket? So we work very closely with insurance companies. A lot of the jobs that we do are through insurance carriers, and so that's our first basis. We know what insurance will pay out for things like that, and so we use that as our basis for really kind of understanding how do we price this? Because we want to make sure that we have really great relationships with the insurance carriers as well. We want them to
Sure.
continue to do business with us. And so that's one. So we use tools like Xactimate, Xactware to help price. But then sometimes there are things where, we're going to custom it based on what the homeowner needs. Insurance
Hmm.
doesn't always cover it. And so for that, we've got to create something that works for them. How do we create a cleaning that makes sense, that is affordable? Sometimes we've got a third party financing group that, if we're talking about, a significant clean there, we'll offer that program. But you're right. It's one of those things where it can range anywhere from, $500 to 100,000. It's just going to depend on the type of clean.
Hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, and not to be graphic at all, but it sounds like it's really important though that you have the best practices to share with franchisees so that there is a standard of care, right?
Absolutely.
And for helping the fellow franchise owner, how do I even bill for this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. We do quite a bit of training on that. Yes.
Well, this is certainly unique. There's nothing common about this. There's no other brand like this. How many franchises do you guys have altogether right now?
126 across the US.
And is that all as of 2021 for when you franchised, when Five Star
No,
took over?
so they started franchising it in 2010.
Okay.
So with that, it's slowly been growing. One of the things that, as you can imagine, this is a unique brand in the sense that you're looking for very specific franchisees. Franchisees who, the aspect of cleaning is one component of it, but then the other aspect of empathy is probably the piece that we look for the most in any new prospective franchisee. That's the mission. Many of our franchisees are, as we look at this is a business model that allows you to serve a mission as well as be able to do good in your community, as well as be a pretty awesome business.
Sure. And do you look for single unit operators or multi-unit franchise owners?
So we've got actually a little bit of both. Predominantly, they're single unit. They'll start single unit and then they'll branch out. I've got one franchisee who has 5 different bio ones across the country, and so he's kind of expanded and hired managers, and then we've got quite a few who will do that as they continue to look at being able to continue to grow their presence.
Okay. And what's the investment range to open one location?
Yeah, yeah. So when we're looking at investment, we're anywhere from generally 130 to about 220.
And how big of an area is a territory?
Yeah. So we define it as it's a protected marketing territory, about anywhere from 750,000 to 1 million in population. In that we're looking at everything from, where are local police departments, where are property management companies, and being able to service that. Interestingly, some of our businesses in, areas like Asheville or like Charleston or Madison, Wisconsin are some of our highest performing businesses.
Is that because they're like the only game in town?
Yes and no. I mean, because then you also know that there's fewer, right? There's fewer deaths, there's fewer. And
Sure.
so with that, I think it's really, I look at it and I've seen this in franchising. A lot of times it just depends on the franchisee. How hungry are you? How aggressive? Where are your relationships? How good are you at networking? And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's what plays out.
And that was my next question is like, okay, what's the kind of person that really thrives in this business? Certainly it's somebody who's community driven and gets the word out, but it's got to be more to it, right? Who are
Right.
your best franchisees and why?
Yeah. So quite a few of our franchisees are former first responders. So they recognize that the need is out there. They've seen it before. They're not squeamish, but at the same, and they're used to following SOPs. This is what the process is. This is how you do it. They also have that ongoing need to contribute back to their community. So we see that. At the same time, one of my fastest growing franchisees is a stay-at-home mom. She did that, and then her kids grew up and left home, and she said, "Well, now what?" And so for that, she's done a phenomenal job, and just really enjoys, being tied to her community. She leveraged all of her community ties, whether it's the PTA, whether it's her BNI network, but being able to really be tied to the community. So it's not just first responders. I've got others who are, they come out of the IT world and,
Hmm.
recognize that this is a people business. And so trying to make sure that people understand, hey, this business thrives on relationships, and they need to understand that your ability to be a part of your community and have that referral business is going to be directly correlated to how active are you in your community. It's not me dropping off a bunch of business cards and saying, call us when you need us.
Right.
It's a, hey, they see us everywhere. They see us at
Hmm.
the firefighters versus police officers, baseball event. We're there flipping burgers. We're there at the K race that they're hosting on Thanksgiving, running in our bio suits. It's all of these different community events that they see that we're involved in. We're part of the community. We want to support and give back. And then with that, they're happy to refer business our way.
And you are unforgettable. So
Right.
not that we want everyone to need the service, but when they do, it's easy for them to remember who they need
Right.
to call, right?
Right, absolutely. We always say our opening line at any BNI meeting is, "I am Danessa and I'm from Bio One, and I hope you never have to call us."
Ain't that the truth? What does training and support look like?
Yeah. So training and support obviously is, how do you train someone in this kind of business? And one of the things that we do is they will spend a week with us here. We're actually based in Utah, and we have what we call mobile murder scenes. And so for that, we will go through and we will go take them through how to clean up bio on multiple floor surfaces, and how do you know how deep to go? How do you remediate it? And so being able to get them, you get into a suit, and we go through all of the OSHA required training and being able to take them through that process. So it's pretty extensive. It's a lot of fun. Who would have thought that cleaning something like that would be fun? But we use real blood, and because it's important that they know what it looks like, smells like, what the, how do we identify where we need to clean, and
Mm-hmm.
everything from flood cuts to ripping up floors. So, and then we've got a couple of really great franchisees who sometimes will, if it's appropriate, will allow us to come out on scene with them and bring our trainees. And then we've got our franchise, our home office team here. Every once in a while, we'll say, hey, if you've got a unique clean, give us a call. We're happy to jump into a suit and come and help you so that we can continue to build on our knowledge base as well. So.
That's awesome. I would imagine, first of all, if somebody's going to even entertain the franchise, they know what they're somewhat getting themselves
Yes.
involved with. So if you're squeamish and you knew you're not going to be able to handle it, you're not going to
This is not the
entertain the
business for
franchise.
you.
You're not going to go forward with it. Yeah, you're not going to get to the point of training. Go, no, this is not what
Yes.
I wanted.
Right. Right.
Well, what about the business side? Because we know that the business starting out maybe lacked the SOPs and people having the KPIs and knowing exactly what they need to do to be successful. How has that evolved now for training, and how big a part is the back end sort of training
Oh,
now?
yes, yes. So, there are a couple things. One is training is pretty formalized. So they have, they go through an onboarding process. So we have our Bree is our onboarding Sherpa, and she takes, from the time they sign their franchise agreements to the time that they come to training. They spend at least a month with her. It's everything from getting the website up and running to getting their insurance to securing their box truck to making sure they've got all of their certifications, bloodborne pathogens, all of the things required to be able to work with the things that we need to. And then they come to training. They come to training for a week, sometimes 2 weeks if they do their OSHA training right after. But they will come for a week and we take them through that whole process. Then we have what we call Bioforce. So Bioforce is held 3 days a week, and our new franchisees and all of our franchisees are invited. Generally, we tend to see a stronger presence of our newer franchisees, but then they have this really great network of people to be able to say, okay, I just came across this. How would you price it? Or what would you do? Or what feedback would you give? So leveraging the franchise network, which is why you get into this, right, is to have that
Mm-hmm.
network of people that you can leverage is key. And so we provide lots of opportunities for them to be able to bounce ideas. A lot of times we'll have a topic. Maybe we'll talk about, well, today's topic is insurance. And someone will say, well, listen, I'm on my way to a drug remediation job and I've got some questions. And we say, great, let's talk about that first. And so it's neat to be able to be nimble there. We have a number of different training programs as it relates to train the trainer, make sure that our franchisees are trained, are OSHA trained as well. Just because of so many of the things that we see, we need to make sure that all of our technicians are well trained, are wearing the right PPE, things like that. And so that's why we have our train the trainer programs, but then we also have our OSHA training, and then we also have our annual conferences.
Okay, Danessa, in all your years of franchising now, in your background, what's been something that has surprised you?
So I would say, I don't know if it's surprised me, but it's taken me a little bit to learn. And one of the things that when you're with a brand, I think, and especially with Bio One, coming in, making lots of change fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm.
name of the game is when you've got really great franchisee engagement that helps with adoption of new programs. And so I always, one of the things that as a home office team, we've really been focused on is making sure we've got really great franchisee engagement that helps us get the adoption of these programs. We can tell them they have to do it because their franchise agreement says to do it, but nobody likes that. It's not because I said so. We
Right.
want them to do it because they trust us, they understand what we're trying to accomplish, how this is going to help their business, and then we give them really good data that says this is why you want to use the CRM, this is why you want to use this marketing program, this is why you want to use these chemicals.
Yeah, getting franchisee buy-in is, well, at least as a founder, I could tell you, is one of the things that was a big surprise for me. I didn't realize early on that making sure I had everybody on board as opposed to just barking orders and saying, we're going to do this because
Right.
I said it's a great idea.
Right.
That was a bit of a shift for me.
Yes, yes, because I said so is not
No,
that doesn't work.
even though I knew it was the best idea,
Yes.
and no, but you still have to get buy-in.
And then the best is when you've got a franchisee who just says exactly the same thing you did. And then
Oh,
they say, best thing ever.
oh my gosh.
Why has nobody told me about this? And I look at this and I say, listen, I love that. I love that that's how you
Yes.
wanted to hear it and you needed to hear it that way. That's great.
I had a
Like,
franchisee once say, oh my gosh, one of the other guys told me about using QuickBooks. It's so amazing. And we were like, really? Tell us more. We've been trying to get you to use QuickBooks for about 5 years. But it was fascinating to him that he was enlightened by another franchise owner about the power of
right,
QuickBooks. Go
right.
figure.
I love it. I love it. And that's why you've got really great franchisees who most of the time will say things that you don't actually even need to say. And it's like kids,
It's
they
true.
listen to their friends all the time.
Yes, it's the same exact thing. Do you guys have a franchise advisory council?
We do. We do.
You do.
And that was new. We created that actually when I joined, and
Yeah,
it's been great. It's essential to have an FAC. I think the ability for them to one be a part of driving the bus is a big piece for us.
of course. Most of the people who are on my show are emerging founders, emerging franchise companies that are maybe not even the point yet where they have an FAC just yet. But I am curious for those that are listening that are on the verge where they know like it's time because they want to get input from every franchisee. That never stops. But there has to be some sort of process where they can collectively get a better voice. So I'm curious to know, how did you guys set up your FAC? What are some of the ways that you guys did this?
Yes, yes. So one of the things I've done FACs number of different ways. Franchise Business Review has a really great guide on how to assemble a franchise advisory council, your first one. And one of the things that they recommend is that you select them instead of
Mm-hmm.
putting it out to vote. I think there's a lot of merit to that, because you know exactly who you're looking for and the
Right.
type of personality. You're setting the tone as you move forward. There's a lot of value and merit to having it go out to vote as well. And
Mm-hmm.
so for that, for Bio One, that's what we decided to do. We had at that point in time, we had already over 120 franchisees. And so for that, I felt like we had enough. And for me, I was trying to establish trust with the network. And so for that, I knew that have an effective FAC, that it needed to be voted on by the franchisees. So we essentially divided the country into four regions. And then for that, then we had them nominate for the candidates that then went to vote. And
Mm-hmm.
it's been great. And from that has evolved additional committees. So we have our FAC, but then we also have our technology committee. We also have our marketing committee. And so it's been really neat to be able, and then one of the others we've been looking at is kind of more of an operations committee or training committee. And so it's been neat to be able to leverage that knowledge base there because, I don't come from the biohazard remediation industry, but our franchisees do. And so I've got all of this wealth of knowledge that we can take and turn into best practices and share and really help these businesses get to profitability quicker and really understand their numbers far better than they ever have.
Yeah, well, you do have the benefit of having this just collection of data, right? Of having over 100 locations that it puts you on a just a different level than other people, whether it's from the FAC or just getting knowledge on the business and how they should grow, right?
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And leverage it. I mean, that's what the franchisees are looking
you
for.
have to.
Yeah,
Yeah. They have to hear from each other, which is equally as important because it can't be just keep coming down from the top.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Where do you see the brand growing over the next 5, 10 years? I mean, Danessa, you got 129 locations, including the three company owned, right? So how big is big and where are we taking this thing?
Yeah. Yeah. So we one of the things, again, when we talk about putting the cat back in the bag when you're at 120, and now we're saying before we did not have defined territories. And so for that, we are in the process of creating defined territories as it relates to marketing. And so for that, in doing that, we realize we've probably got another 100 markets we can sell and an award. And so with that, we anticipate the 250 is probably where we'll max across the country, whether that's individual new franchisees or whether that's other franchisees adding additional territories to their market. But as we look at it, we recognize that there is such a need. And as we grow national programs, working with some of these insurance carriers who say, hey, listen, I want a one-stop shop. I want to call when I've got a claim in this region. I want to work with one company who knows our SOPs, knows how to file the claim, knows all of the paperwork and the documentation, knows what to charge. I want to work with one company. And so we see some really neat opportunities there. And so as we continue to grow our footprint, our ability to provide that service anywhere in the US continues to grow.
Okay. And there's some untapped markets that you guys are looking to get into?
Oh boy, we have some great markets. California is a great market. We look at that. We know there's lots and lots of opportunity there. We look at, to Texas, Texas is a growing market as well. And so for that, we know we've got lots of opportunity. And then even in the Midwest, we've got some really strong pockets there that we'd love to get some presence in. And then Washington. I mean, Washington, my goodness, continues to grow. Oregon, it's again, there's some really neat opportunities to really be able to help people understand who Bio One is and what service we can provide. The Northeast, we've got a pretty strong presence, but Boston market, we'd love to get some additional businesses out there. Yeah, we've definitely got some target areas.
Incredible. So you're really only about half full then.
Yeah, isn't that great?
That is, yeah, that is fascinating. I'm afraid to ask this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Are there any trends that you're seeing in the industry or what's evolving for you guys?
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. One of the areas that we are seeing an increased frequency is drug remediation. And,
Mm,
we hear a lot about fentanyl, right? And
yeah.
it's interesting, if you would have asked our franchisees 5 years ago what kind of drug remediation they were doing, predominantly they tell you meth. Meth was, that was kind of what we were doing. But as fentanyl, we're seeing a stronger presence. A lot of the drug remediation we're doing, we are finding fentanyl present. And so in that, we have a very specific training that our franchisees need to take if they are going to do fentanyl remediation, any kind of drug remediation, because it's very specialized. It is very dangerous. And you want to make sure that they're trained to be able to do this safely and effectively. And so, working with whether it's, we start to see things like car rental agencies are seeing a higher instance of rental cars being used for drug trafficking. And so we get a
Mm,
lot of phone calls from car rental agencies asking us to come and clean the cars. Sometimes they'll destroy the car after they say that it needs to be remediated, it needs to be cleaned, but then most likely we'll destroy it because it's not worth them taking the risk. And so either way, they need someone to come and clean it first. And so it's been interesting to see that kind of a trend. And we love that we're nimble enough that we can add that additional training to our service lines.
that's all right. Well, it is what it is, right?
Right? It is.
Yeah.
And someone's got to
Yeah.
do it, right?
Absolutely. I think that obviously the company had a great foundation starting out, right? And then being part of this platform, established the, like you said, the KPIs, the SOPs, were now established a lot of the back office work that would give a potential franchisee great confidence that in the business. Is there any other reason, like why now is a great time for somebody to join the brand?
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I would say that as we look at it's becoming more and more common. People are becoming aware of biohazard remediation, crime and trauma scene cleaning. Everybody always asks, "Hey, have you seen the movie?" And we're like, "We've seen the movie." And so as we look at the opportunity as it becomes more and more mainstream, now is the time. Now is the time. We work with a lot of restoration companies. There's several restoration companies who say, hey, listen, we do bio, but we don't really do bio. We don't, our technicians don't love doing bio. And we tell them, hey, we don't do build back. So we come in, we'll remediate it, but we're always looking for a great partner to refer the build back. And so with that, we've been able to really build some partnerships and some relationships there to refer business back and forth. And so as that continues to grow, we see, hey, now is a good time to get into this. Bio One, we are defining this industry. This is we work very closely with a lot of the insurance carriers and being able to help them understand this is what bioremediation looks like. It's very different than just a restoration. If you have a fire, that's very different than a fire cleanup versus a flood cleanup. This is a biohazard remediation, and that looks very different. But even things as simple as like working with we work with railway systems. Amazingly, they strike a deer, and someone's got to come out and clean that. And so, being able to for companies to recognize that there are companies like Bio One that exist out there. I think more than anything, we attend these shows and they say, oh, we didn't even know a company like this exists. Uh,
Right.
and so for that, we say, hey, give us a call. Give us a call.
All right. Well, if someone was interested in learning more about opening a franchise, where would they go?
Yeah, actually, they can check out our website, bio1franchising.com, and love to have a chat. And we've got lots of available territory, so would love to continue a conversation there.
All right. Well, Danessa, I got one last question for you. I finish every podcast with what I call the franchise tip jar. And so the question is really for founders and presidents that are listening to this, what advice would you give somebody that was stuck at maybe a dozen or so franchises? You guys are, 126 franchises strong. So how can we help those that feel stuck in that, that 20 units?
Yeah, yeah. A couple things. One is I would say get a peer group. Get a group of other franchise presidents, founders, and bounce some ideas off of them. Have them do a deep dive. Check your ego at the door and say, help me out. I've been very, very fortunate to be a part of a couple of groups that allow you to be a little bit vulnerable and say, hey, we've got this issue going on. Would love your thoughts. And so having someone who is not as close to it, it's
Mm-hmm.
nice to be able to get feedback from others and lean on them because they'll lean on you when they need it. I find that those kinds of groups are pretty amazing. And then the other piece of it I look at when you get stuck like that is I also reach out to the franchise network and I say, what's going on? What are you loving? What are you not loving? Sometimes when you get stuck, is it some validation concerns? What are the franchisees feeling? What are they saying? It's the franchise sentiment. And I always like to do a check-in there. We do what we call we do a quarterly pulse. So every quarter we check in with our franchisees. One of them is the Big Franchise Business Review Survey. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's a great way for us to get feedback. It helps us as we continue to put together initiatives for our upcoming year. And we call them and we say, thank you so much. Thank you for letting us know these are things that you'd like to see us work on. And it's great to see it as you do it year over year and to be able to say, they say, hey, before communication, we didn't feel like communication was that great, but now over the past 6 months, we feel like it's improved. And you get 80% of the network saying, we feel like it's improved. And so that's great. That's great. And so it's helpful to be able to get that feedback from the franchise network. But I'm a firm believer in peer groups and in listening to your franchisees.
Awesome advice. Danessa, thank you so much for being on today's show. I appreciate it. Nice meeting you.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.